It's Braden once again with MMA Island, and I'm here with Mohammad Shahid, the president of Brave Combat Federation. Just a couple weeks out from some very exciting news at that press conference. The MMA Super Cup is coming during uh, International Combat Week. Do you want to give us just like a really quick rundown once again on what this cup's going to look like?
Yeah, basically, this cup is going to be 100% focused on changing and introducing a new format for amateur MMA. So basically, if you know the International Mixed Martial Art Federation's annual calendar, you have the Asians, Oceanians, Europeans, and the World Championship Africans. So you have these competitions, Continentals and the World Championship. But the MMA Super Cup is going to be it's going to be the inaugural event in March in Bahrain at the Combat Week. But at the same time, it's going to be the curtain closer for the IMMAF annual calendar of events. So based on the events that we have throughout the year, ending at the World Championship, after that, they're going to be they're going to have the world ranking. And based on the world ranking, we're going to be taking the top 6 teams that's going to be invited to this event. And of course, we want to focus on the development side as well. So we added 2 wildcard opportunities, and that's where the Balkan team and the Arab team is going to be participating. So this is in a nutshell what the event is going to look like. But of course, the format is going to be different because it's going to be team versus team format. So what that means is it's going to be, first of all, it's going to be easy for the eyes for the people to see and understand what this competition is going to look like. Because if you watch football, when we say Brazil, you know, it's yellow and white, yellow and black. You know, when you say Holland, it's already orange, you know. So that factor is going to be added when you have the team jerseys rather than just blue and red all the time, you know. So you're going to have the team jerseys. On the second part, it's easy to understand because a lot of people don't understand the 10-9-3 judges system, you know. So this is going to be much more easy to understand because team versus team. So it's 9 athletes fighting against 9 athletes. We just have to look at the main score, like the penalty shootouts in the football world, where you have those circles and red and green, win and lose. So it's much more easy for us to understand that how many did Team A win? Let's say Russia versus Ireland. How many wins did Russia get? How many wins did Ireland get? Out of 9, whoever gets 5 wins is going to go through to the next round. So it's easy for understanding as well. But most importantly, it's going to take away that individual factor and add a team factor to it, which means that you could have the best fighter in your team, but you need the whole team to perform to actually go through. So it's more about the country than one individual athlete. And so there is more pressure from the MMA fans of your country to make sure that it's not just one great fighter going to be there and, oh, we're going to get 1 gold medal. Instead, we want the team to qualify. There's no point. He's not going to get any gold medal winning a fight or getting a knockout in the first round and the team goes away, you know, that none of them, nobody else performs. So there's going to be a pressure for the federation to bring the best team possible. And they don't have to worry about registration fee, who can join, who cannot join, unlike the other events of the IMAF calendar years, where only the people, sometimes the best fighters don't have the fee or the financial backing to pay the registration fee. But here we take care of everything, their accommodation, their flights, the coaches, everybody's going to be taken traveling, and everything is going to be free. So there's no cost for them. And this is going to be the format that's also going to be exciting because you'll have more government involvement to the national team, and that's getting MMA closer to the government sector, and also the private sectors to come on board because they want to be part of a national team and sponsor the national team. So it's going to be exciting. It's going to be a tournament format, quarterfinals, semifinals, and the finals. Of course, it's going to be a 3rd place match as well. And this will be the first time in the history of combat sports where the International Federation will be able to create an event where the national federations can go back with a check in their hand, you know, and that's the most important thing I think national federations have always been looking for, is to get that boost in terms of financial support from the International Federation. So this event is going to be the beginning of that financial support to the national federation, so they can really invest back into their amateur circuit or development program in their countries.
For sure. Okay, so that's a great rundown. So the press conference went through quite a lot of things. If I could just clarify a couple things, that'd be great. So in terms of the weight, so the tournament's taking place 3 days out of like a 4-day span, right, of inside International Combat Week.
Right.
I know IMMAF in the past have done weight allowance body percentage per day, but they've also I believe have done events where they didn't do that. Is it going to be a part of this week, or are the athletes going to be weighing in exactly the same weight every single day? How's that going to look?
Yeah, so basically we're going to give some exemption for this event. Definitely, because you're going to have one weight class. The fighters can go change to two weight classes. So it could be 77 to 70 and 71 for each athletes. But again, it's definitely based on the regulation where they're going to be allowing a certain amount of weight cut that they can actually do, and to be part of the different weight class. So you're mostly in 77 and going up rather than you're cutting to 77 and then going down to 71 by cutting more, so that's going to
Mhm.
be a system that we're actually, as we speak, our team is in Abu Dhabi having a conversation with the regulatory authority of MMAF to come back with the actual regulations and their policies with the final one, and that'll be distributed accordingly. But as of now, as what we have discussed today, if there could be some changes to this, but most importantly, we're looking at two weight classes they could be part of, because that's what's going to make this event a little more exciting. And that's why we didn't really do 9 fighters and 9 substitutes. We added only 2 substitutes. So because we also want to make it a little bit entertaining and hold the coaches a little bit responsible, because there's going to be a lot of factors in coaches' decisions as well to what they do with the team. Because you might be competing against the world champion in the semifinals. So in the quarterfinals, you want to rest your best 77 and get the substitute on board. So your best 77 can wait for the semifinals to compete against the world champion from Russia, maybe. So those kind of elements are going to be a factor for it. So it's going to be exciting in terms of storytelling and promoting the teams, because we'll have a lot of input from the coaches of what their decisions are. Because every time you see an athlete doesn't perform, okay, something's wrong with the athlete. He's not in his best shape. He must have had not the best camp, whatever it is. This time, it's about the team. So one guy loses, we understand, but the team winning is in the hands of the coaches, because they have to get the best team. They have to make sure that this team is prepared based on looking at who are the other fighters. You have the international mixed martial art federation world championships to look at the quality of the other athletes who are going to be coming at that weight classes. So there's going to be a lot of factors in analyzing the competition. So a lot of pressure on the coaches, and we like that idea that the pressure is on the coaches, that just makes it more exciting.
Okay, that makes so much more sense. That's great. If I can switch gears just a little bit now, I'm curious about what your thoughts are on the effects the Cupper is going to have for Brave long term. Obviously, it's the next big step for IMMAF and amateur competition, but in terms of Brave Combat Federation, um, what are the long term benefits that the Cup is going to have on the sport from your particular perspective there?
So basically, if you look at the beginning of Brave as well, we've always said that Brave is not a promotion that's entering into the industry to compete with other promotions. Brave Combat Federation is always about, we said that Brave is a national project. It's a vision to change the mixed martial industry from an event business to a sports business. And that's always been our vision. That's the first part of our vision. The second part of our vision was continuation of that is to give opportunity to athletes from around the world, regardless of race, creed, sex, nationality, or even marketability. And that's been always our vision statement, and we've never changed it. And that's why Brave is in the market today. So while we develop a brand within the same system of mixed martial art that exists today, which is the event business model, we are still making a small change with Brave in the past years, was globalizing it. So the reason we were globalizing it is to show to achieve several goals. One is to collaborate with the national federations, collaborate with the local promotions that are already investing in their country but cannot go at a global stage. So you see us doing a lot of co-promotions, partner with the national federations, and bringing in a huge army behind us to achieve the bigger goal, which is to create the BNL, Brave National League format in the future, because you need to go to each country and build that system and get the government on board, private sectors on board. So every event of Brave, you will see there's a government factor to it. There's a bilateral relationship. There's at the same time empowering the national federation, working with the co-promotion. But also the benefit from that is the second part of the vision, which is giving opportunity to athletes. We were able to create superstars much more faster than many other promotions. And the reason why is not because of the marketing strength itself. It's simply because of doing the, let's say, the actual hard work of taking athletes and making them compete internationally. If you take an athlete from Sweden and make him compete in India, Brazil, and every part of the world, he's going to add, there's going to be a lot of fan base added to him. And that's where you see guys like Gamzat Chimaev or Jarrah from this part of the world, or Johnny Walker from Brazil, or so many athletes that has grown very fast with Brave Combat Federation from 1-0, 2-0, all the way to 6-7 and 0, and they're big superstars, and they're today one of the biggest names in for the future of mixed martial art, and that's because we took that risk of taking them around the world. Not many promotions can do that because every time you go to a new territory, it's always challenging because the territory does not know you as a brand. So you're always going to get the challenge of not getting enough ticket sales, sponsorship opportunities, and that's the risk no other promotion wants to take because their end goal is the financial reports and the shareholders. Our end goal is the development of the sport. So it makes a huge difference between what we do. And definitely, while we do that with Brave Combat Federation, we're also, since day one, since 2017, we've been supporting the International Federation because we believe the end goal, what we're trying to achieve, is a global ecosystem for the sport of mixed martial art. And that's the FIFA structure, where you have the International Regulation Authority, national confederations, and under the national confederations, you have the national federations, and each countries have their own league format, Bundesliga, La Liga, Serie A in their country, which is linked with each other, where you can have the amateur league model, create superstars. Private sectors are going to come in because they want to buy the teams and franchises, and these leagues will be linked with the other leagues from other countries, which makes them get the global exposure at the same time. And this all will be regulated by the national federation. The national federation will be regulated by the confederation. Confederation will be regulated by the international federation. So there is security, there is a business model, there is private sector and government involved, and this is the long-term plan for Brave Combat Federation. So it's not about Brave. We are brave enough to take that risk and go into the market and make this happen. That's why we call ourselves our promotion as Brave. But in the end of the day, this is a bigger picture to create a sports business out of MMA and not fall into the trap of what boxing has fell into. And very soon MMA will also be into that situation. So in this model, regulation is very strong, important. And if you don't have a strong regulatory body like FIFA, you might have a challenge in creating that business model. So that's why we have always partnered with the IMMAF and empowered them by creating one of the biggest world championships in Bahrain. And the MMA Super Cup is another step towards taking them forward and making sure that regardless of anything else, they are going to be one of the leading combat sports federations in the world. So combined together with the regulation side and with what Brave has been doing, once you combine them together, that's when you get the full structure in the future. And hopefully the end game could be the MMA Super Cup at a professional level as well. So you could have your leagues, you could have your Manchester Uniteds and Liverpools and everything else. But then in the end of the day, we all want to wait for every 4 years and see that World Cup, and that's something else. So you want to see that professional level World Cup, and that's the MMA Super Cup. Hopefully in the next 5 years, will be at a professional side where we can use these leagues and not be locked to a contract or locked to some kind of promotional agreement. They can't compete for their national teams. And under this structure, they will be forced to compete for the national team because they're all regulated by one umbrella, under one umbrella, like FIFA. It'll be one umbrella with IMMAF. And when they compete at a professionals representing their countries, that's going to be the fun side when we're talking about Russia, Ireland, Bahrain, all these countries coming together, and the best fighters that we know of has been in the media world for a long time. They're going to be representing their countries together. I think that's going to be the ultimate format that's going to end up. But it is a one big global ecosystem. That's why Brave is a national project to each country that it goes to. So MMA Super Cup, definitely a part of that, part of the other half of developing the amateurs, but it is also, everything is linked together because once it wants to go pro, it has to cross over the format of the leagues. And that's the one big, let's say, full business system rather than the system we have today.
So will you be looking at the particulars in terms of the rules and the infrastructure of the Super Cup and like how it works, what's successful, what's not, in terms of what you're then going to be using to look at developing the Brave International Combat League further? Because I know that like it was announced not too long ago, but we're still waiting on a lot of news from that. Are you looking at anything during the cup as sort of like a tester or a precursor then?
Oh yeah, I think that there's going to be a lot of learning lessons from this event. I mean, from our perspective, we've always looked at the side of how can this be one of the biggest events in amateur MMA. I mean, that's our goal as Brave and KHK. But from the IMMAF side, They are the international federation, the regulatory body, and it's their responsibility to look at the rules, regulations, and everything else. And it's completely in their hands, A to Z. But from our side also, because we added a lot of entertainment factor, we are very sure that there's going to be a lot of comments coming out, especially when it's country versus country. You're always going to have a huge bunch of people who know MMA and does not know MMA are going to be watching this because it's about their country. So there's going to be a lot of comments that's going to be coming in terms of what's fair and what's not fair. And most of them, some might be even right. We might learn from it and we might have to change as we go forward. So this is the first event. We will have a lot of learning lessons from this. And as we go forward, even the countries might go from 6 to 8 to 10 to 12. The prize money might increase. But the most important goal is to make sure that this is a successful event. And it's already a successful event because it is the year-ending event. It is the only event that the federations are going to get paid. So the model itself makes it way more better than any other events that's happened in the MMA world or combat sports. But now it's about how much broadcast rights this are going to get. So I also see the commercial side, and I feel like this is going to be more commercial friendly event at the amateur level than most of the events that happened before, because even for television, it's easier for them to broadcast. Russian television can broadcast a Russian team. Now it's much more easier to sell the rights because they are very clear of what's happening and their team and where they're going from there. And for media, it's so much more easier to promote it. Unlike if you look at the World Championships or any other amateur event, it's so hard to promote it rather than the event itself, that the World Championship is happening. And but other than that, it's very difficult to promote the whole event as a whole because there's God knows how many fighters, 300 plus fighters. You don't know which fighters to focus on. If you have, you take 4 to 5 fighters that you want to focus on as a story, but that's it. Here you have a competition story, fighters, coaches, teams. And very easy to convey that to the public and the fans as well. So on the commercial side, it is going to be the highest viewed amateur MMA event in IMAF history. It is definitely going to be a very commercial friendly event, entertaining, easy to understand. So, but you're right, we might definitely have a lot of learning curve here, and we are looking forward to it, really excited to learn more and develop this event as it goes forward. But it has to happen. If you don't make it happen, you're never going to learn from it. And we believe that making this happen, it's also allows a lot of federation to think again now and say that, 2022 is coming in. We need to be participating in the competitions to be in the top 6 ranking, or even get the opportunity to be in the wild card maybe. And that's what they'll be fighting for. So it even benefits IMMAF events because now people are looking to compete because they know that there's an end goal to it. That if you be in the top 6 ranking, it's not just about the bragging rights. It's also about being part of the MMA Super Cup, where they have a good odds for going back home with a check for their federations.
So before I lead into my next question, I was going to ask if there's an update onto when we're going to find out what the opening round matchups are, because right now we have the top seeds in the 4 corners of the tournament. Is there an update as to when is it going to be a draw? Is it, or what the system is going to be to find their opponents?
So yeah, there's definitely going to be a draw. And we've already put in the first place, second place, and third place, and fourth place, which I think on top of my head, it's Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and Bahrain, the top 4. And then we will have a draw. We're looking at the second week of February to have the draw. And in that draw, it's going to be a very simple draw where we're going to just take the 4 teams, seed 1, seed 2, seed 3, and seed 4, just to be fair on that part, because we have 2 wild cards as well. And that's it, and that's going to be the starting event. And then the fixture is already built, so we know how the fixture is going to go. The winners of the competition, which are the winners that will meet at the semifinals. We have that clear as per the model of the draw. So yeah, it's going to be a draw for sure.
All right, perfect. So right now we have in particular, I'm curious about this because Bahrain is waiting for an opponent that will come out of the draw. Ireland does not have an opponent. And I'm curious as to, let's just say Bahrain and Ireland end up meeting at some point during the tournament. We then also have this title fight matched up later in the week at Brave 57. Brad Katona will be fighting. And as a Canadian, we like to believe he's Canadian, but he is Canadian, but he's also representing SBG Ireland, and he's obviously, he's training out of Ireland now, and he's a big fighter there as well. So uh, when he's fighting Kahuji, we have this Bahrain versus Ireland match going on already for Brave 57. Do you think that the national pride aspect of the Super Cup, and in particular, if those two teams were to meet, how is that going to affect the build-up for Brave 57 and potentially other matchups as belts get added to the card?
I think it's great to have Ireland run by John Kavanagh, and John Kavanagh has a very long history with us from a very long time. I mean, even before Brave, when we started the Cage MMA team, John Kavanagh was a part of our Cage MMA team with Franz Malambo. James Gallagher was part of the initial first ever Cage MMA team when we had Khabib, Islam, John Kavanagh, Franz Malambo. All these guys were all together. SBG, Dagestan, everyone was in one team at that point. This was before the history and stories came in, but we had that history with John. So we're really good friends. We know each other. And we always have a laugh about it when we say that SBG has a very tough time in Brave. Every time the SBG guys have come to Brave, they've never really had a great run. It's a curse for SBG to be in Brave, so we have a laugh about it all the time. And this is going to be a big important event for John, because all this curse of SBG being in Brave is going to be wiped out if he can get a Brave gold and take it to the SBG gym and put it on his wall, so that's something that is going to be a big achievement for him as SBG and for John. But yeah, on the other hand, this is a huge moment for Bahrain to have their own Mohammad Ali, Bahrain's own Mohammad Ali, because we've never had a professional combat sports athlete going for a global stage to compete against an athlete to be the world champion, and that's something in the history of sports. We've had Olympic medals, we've had all those achievements, but this is going to be the first time a professional athlete at combat sports is going to be a world champion. So that's going to be very huge for not just for Hamza, not just for MMA or combat sports, but just for the sports history and sports legacy of Bahrain, so it's going to be really stamped there. So I don't know if that's going to be a pressure for him or it's going to be a benefit in terms of having a huge country behind him, and Brad has to come to that country and deal with the home fans. It could be either ways, but on the other hand, for Brad, John always tells me that this kid is special and he could be one of the best bantamweights in the world. He just needs to make sure that he has a platform to showcase that, and here he's showcased that he could fight at the highest level. He's not just a black belt in jiu-jitsu under John Kavanagh, which is great, but also has a very strong boxing pedigree behind him. So it is a tough opponent. It is a tough fight, but it is an important fight for the legacy of bantamweight division as well, because we have had a very long reigning champion at bantamweight, and now it's vacant. So it's important fight to restart that conversation with guys like Mohammad Machayev, Gamzat, Magomedov, all these guys lined up waiting for a title to be inaugurated so they all can fight for it. So there is a huge story behind the bantamweight division. It is going to be pressureful fight. But, if Bahrain and Ireland meets at the MMA Super Cup, I think on the MMA Super Cup side, we're looking at, it's going to be a story in itself, because we're talking about a history of amateur MMA, and the amateur MMA, Bahrain has been always leading in the amateur MMA, being the top ranked country until the last year when Russia took over and they've become the top sport. So this world championship actually that's happening in Abu Dhabi right now, we are fighting with Russia to take over that, get that first place back to Bahrain. So that's the competition that's really going on. So I know that there's a big competition between Russia and Bahrain because of the history of amateur MMA, of who were first and who's second, and how many finals do Russia and Bahrain compete usually. But on the other hand, it's also interesting how much Kazakhstan and Tajikistan has come a long way in terms of MMA development. And Tajikistan is still young in terms of, I think it was the last 2 years that they've got a really good push for their amateur federation, and they've started bringing really big teams to competitions. And we are seeing the result. I mean, in 2 years, they just bumped up to top 6. And that makes a lot of difference, And Ireland as well, Conor sponsored, Conor McGregor was the sponsor for the last youth championship, I think, where they had a massive team, and that just kept them moving up now. And I see a very big team for World Championship as well. So, and the unification of the Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland together as one team as Team Ireland. That just makes the team much more stronger with more options of top guys to compete. So it's going to be exciting regardless. For me, as a guy who's selling the broadcast rights as well, I just wish that there's a Russia-Ireland fight as well, somewhere in the competition or in the draw. So that's also going to be something interesting, because now it's not two fighters that are talking about their country. It's actually country versus country, you know. So I want to see, I don't know how much will be the impact, but I really want to see how much will be that backing for Russia and Ireland when they see this is actually nation versus nation. And these are literally the best fighters from their country. You can't argue, you have no excuse to say if these are the best amateurs in their country. These are, because there's no more excuses about registration fee or anything else. And the winner becomes actually the best nation with the best amateur team in the world. So there is going to be a really a huge national pride factor attached to it. So that's going to be interesting. We're really looking forward to that. But that's on the amateur side. I think there's a competition between Russia and Bahrain, Ireland and Russia. But definitely the Balkan team is coming to prove a point, because I know how much they have invested in the sport of MMA in the past years. I know how much Bulgaria is just in the top 8 already, you know, so they're right up there to almost be, I think that they're on the 7th or 8th. I'm not really, but one of these positions, which means they're already there at the top. And then you're adding Serbia and Slovenia, who have invested so much for years, almost 10 years of amateur experience development in Serbia, and almost 15, 20 years of pro MMA athletes and development that's happening in Slovenia. But this combination will unite them to bring in a much more bigger structure and strategy for the development in the Balkan region. Together, they are much more stronger. And with Bulgaria's competition experience, Serbia's amateur development experience, and Slovenia's pro level experience, they're going to have a very good team. And I think they are the true underdogs for this event. And it's a great opportunity for the Arab team as well, because Arab is not West Asia. So you're also getting some of the North African countries like Morocco, Algeria, and Egypt, part of the Gulf region as well. So see, it's an exciting event. Every country versus country is a story. If Arabs compete against Balkans at some point, that's going to be a good story, because that means they've qualified to semifinals, you know. So for them to get a wild card, any one of the wild cards qualify from the quarterfinals is a big news in itself. And Tajikistan and Kazakhstan, it's an interesting news, because nobody in Asia, when we speak about Asian MMA, we never really mention the Central Asian countries. We somehow forget it because they're always within the MMA media of Eastern Europe, Russian language. So we're always skipping them away. But today we realize from the world ranking that some of the best athletes and one of the best development programs in MMA in all of Asia is actually from Central Asia. So that's a huge statement that they're putting at a world level, that when it comes to the Asian MMA, the actual leaders today currently are Central Asia and West Asia in terms of development. And that puts up a really good pressure on the rest of the Asian countries to say that it's time for them to step up and be part of represent Asia. You know, it's a huge continent, a lot of opportunities. So I think every fight, every team has a story in the amateur side of Super Cup. So that's going to be a little bit exciting. But yes, on the professional side, Hamza Brad Katona, this is going to be one of the history books for Middle East, for Bahrain, and for SBG. And that fight is going to be in itself very, very exciting. And John, I know how much SBG and John really would like to have that goal taken back to Ireland.
For sure. Those yeah, like you said, there's so many different storylines that that add up on this during the week now. That's pretty much everything that I had planned to ask you. I will let you go in a second, but I do want to ask one quick thing. I did notice that Ahmed Amir on his Instagram after his title fight had 2 surgeries. Is there any update on his condition that you can tell us about, or if he's going to be coming back to defend the title, or what's going on there?
It's a tough situation right now. We've been discussing. He's actually right now with the team, traveled with the team to Abu Dhabi. But before he traveled, we had a chat to discuss about what's the situation. We spoke with the doctors as well. And the doctors needs to, it's not about recovery, it's more about evaluations. They're going to be watching him for a couple of months before they could make a decision of if he would need a 3rd surgery, or if he would need to, if he can continue. So it's a very weird situation. It's one of those situations where you don't know, like if it was a fracture, you know how long does it take. If it was a ligament tear and surgery, you know how long does it take. but he's in a position where he has multiple injuries, but some of the injuries are more of the doctor keeping an eye on him and making sure that we see how the progress is, and we can only make a decision on the progress. If the progress is as good as they expect, then he would be able to fight at some point, which they will give us. But otherwise, they will need to go for a third surgery. And after the third surgery, what does it mean then? Do you continue to evaluate him? Will there be a fourth surgery? So that's in a very that special situation where we have no idea what can we expect. But which is why I think we officially want to announce the interim title. We need to put out the interim title out there, because that division is a crazy division. When you look at Ahmed Amir as a champion, and behind him you have Sam Patterson, you have Kubanic, you have John Bruin, you have Slobodan now after beating Rolando D, but Rolando D is still in the mix, and Amin Ayub is still out there. He's just lost his title. Doesn't mean that, he is definitely a next contender as well. So there's that lightweight, interesting mix that's going on in that division. So with Camille also on board, although he lost against Sam Patterson with that choke, but otherwise he's still out there as a top talent. So interesting weight division, top talents lined up, and they need to fight for a title. So if he takes a longer time, then he will have to vacate his title. But as of now, we will officially announce the interim title, and then there'll be a fight for the interim title, because we are not, at least if we knew a date from the doctors, we would have an idea. But since we don't have, I think it's the best idea to, it's not, and I don't think people will say that we are doing the interim title in a hurry, because it is the situation it is. So I think it's fair for the rest of the division to go on an interim title and get that. And if he doesn't come back, that'll be vacated, and this will be the official champion.
So I guess it'd be hard to say now, I would imagine, because you are still waiting on to hear whether that third surgery is needed. But if it isn't, or if he tells you that he does need that third surgery, do you have an idea on a timeline on when you want that interim title to actually be competed for, roughly?
Basically, it's all going to happen really quick, because we're going to have an idea of what's the situation once it's back from Abu Dhabi. So we will have a clear idea from the doctors, and we will see after he's back, and they will evaluate him. That's going to be at 1 week or 2 weeks time, basically. So based on that, I would, in the best case scenario, we would have an interim title in March at the Brave Intelligence Combat. That's in the perfect world, So that's what for me would happen, is let's kickstart the bantamweight story. Let's kickstart the lightweight story. And we still have the unfinished business at the middleweight between Fakhruddin and Mualim. And we need that story to also have an ending to see who's going to be the actual middleweight champion. So we'd love that rematch happening in March as well. So 3 titles, a perfect story for me. But let's hope everything goes according to plan.
So unofficial right now, but you're looking at bantamweight, lightweight, and potentially middleweight?
Middleweight is official.
Middleweight's official.
As of now, it is official. We're going to have a Fakhruddin and Maalim rematch. So that's confirmed. We've got everything done from both sides. We're waiting on a few little details, but everything is good to go now. So so that's confirmed. Lightweight is just on this. And of course, it's a crazy mix, and we'll see. Definitely Kubanic is going to be one side of it, because he was supposed to be the next in line. We've promised him that whoever becomes the champion will fight against Kubanic. So since Kubanic is on the line, the question is who's going to fight Kubanic, So you have Amin Ayub, he was a champion. In an ideal world, that would have been a rematch with Ahmed Amir, because of the fight and the quality of the fight and how it went to the decision. So if that's the case, I think that would be the ideal choice for me. But we're still talking to the guys and keeping them on standby, and let's see how Ahmed Amir's situation goes. Would he be, if all is good, Ahmed Amir will fight Kubanic. If not, then we'll have to have that conversation with Amin Ayub, and we're keeping that on standby right now. But if things go wrong, it should be Amin Ayub versus Kubanic.
For sure. A moment ago, while you were listing fighters who were potentially there for that title, you mentioned Rolando D, and I know. So when you see a fight like that, like obviously he was on the last card, or a fight that's extremely close, right? It's one of those fights where you look at both fighters, and it's hard to say, like, even though there's a winner and a loser officially, like the fans won. It's one of those sort of fights, right? So when you look at like contenders after that, do you put someone like that how close is he to the title now? Like, even though it's a loss, it was one of those ones that
Yeah,
was, you know what I mean? Like his stock almost rose in that fight at the same time, right?
sure. If you think about it, see, if you think about Orlando D, I mean, he's after his win against John Bruin, which is considered to be the top lightweight in Oceania's region, and he was considered to be the next big thing actually in the lightweight division. But of course, the pandemic affected everybody in terms of their training and camping. It's not the same high level, top level peak athletes that we will be getting in 20 and 21, you know, so that was a challenge. And on top of that, for Orlando, he's after that fight, he's lost against Kubanic. So Kubanic will be fighting for the interim title or for the title. So that's the guy he lost against. And then the second loss was with the fight that we all saw, which was a very close fight. If you would have leaned, the judges leaned towards Orlando D, nobody would have a complaint on that. You know, if it would have gone to Slobodan, no complaints. The only complaint people are having is also that it leaned to Slobodan and it was a unanimous decision. That's the question, you know, that it should have been a split decision. We would have been fine with it. But that's been the argument that people have been having, that it should have been a split decision, Slobodan, and that's fine. But winning could go either ways, you know, because that's how the close the fight was. But when you make a fight and have a fight in the hometown of the opponent, you always know this is not a new thing. We've seen this over and over again in the history of MMA. There's always a challenge fighting in somebody's home country and getting that decision, you know. You have to finish it. You have to finish the fight if you want to leave no doubt. And we all know that story. We all know that statement that don't leave it in the hands of the judges. But that's the situation. So for Rolando D, you lost against a contender, and then you had a very close fight in a hometown of your opponent in a main event. You know, so yes, he's out there in the mix. The only thing is to pick yourself back up, be mentally strong, and know that, you know, it's not a far away. But as a fighter, of course, you get back-to-back losses. You do feel really down, you know, and you don't think about all these details, how we think as promoters or how we think as fans. You know, we don't look at all these details. Who did I lose against? They just think about 2 losses. You know, that's a bad position for them. But definitely, if you think about it, in that division, whoever he wins against, if you look at the market, you're talking about Sam Patterson, you talk about John Bruin, you're talking about Slobodan's rematch, we're talking about Camille, all the top guys. And if beating any one of them that's out there puts him right back into the mix, because this is the top 6-7 guys that are in the list from Ahmed Amir onwards. But yes, he'll need to pick himself up. The division is tough, you know, and get that 1 or 2 wins for him to be right back in the mix, you know.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I know you're a busy man. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate that you can pick out a slot in your day and talk to me. So yeah, once again, thank you so much.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, have a great day. Thank you again.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.